Rescue Authority Audit Committee meeting. Can we have apologies for absence? I believe we've got Mr. Anthony Boyle, our co-opted member. I'm not aware of any other absences.
No other apologies, Chair.
Lovely. Can I ask for any declarations of interest to any particular item? Okay, lovely. Just so that you're aware, as chair, I'm of a certain age, so I will be taking my glasses on and off because I can't read and speak at the same time. So if I don't see you put your hand up, just kind of give me a wave and let me know and I'll come back to you. Can we have agreement for minutes of the previous meeting? That's on page 5 to 10. Okay, we'll take that item as agreed, thank you. And we will move on to item 4, which is the Treasury Management 24 to 25 annual report. And our Director of Finance and Procurement, Mike Rea, will take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. The Treasury Management 24-25 annual report, and the purpose of the report is to advise members of the activities of the Treasury Management operation and actual performance against the agreed potential indicators. Members approved the Treasury Management strategy within the 24-25 budget and medium-term financial plan at the budget meeting in February 2024. Members have received regular updates on Treasury Management performance against the strategy as part of the quarterly financial reviews and the interim Treasury Management report during 24-25. This report advises members on the outturn position for Treasury Management operation and activities and its performance in 24-25. As per paragraph 8 on page 13 of today's agenda, the report confirms that the Treasury Management activity for the year has been carried out in line with the approved strategy and within borrowing and Treasury Management limits set by the authority at the start of the year. Appendix A on pages 17 to 22 summarises the Treasury Management activity for 24-25. I can confirm that no new borrowing was arranged within the year. Outstanding debt remained at 33.7 million. Investments increased from 26 million to 47 million, and Treasury Management activity has been carried out in compliance with the relevant codes and statutes and within the borrowing and Treasury Management limits set by the authority under the Prudential Code. Members are asked to note the report. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on the report?
To clarify for me or mine as new staff, as they said, your outstanding debt, is that a rolling debt?
Yes, that's it's a debt. It's a long-term debt. It's a number of loans that aren't due to be payment for another further 10 years. We have looked at whether we can reconfigure the debt to a lower rate of interest, but the debt is with the Public Works Loan Board. And the actual payments to actually pay the debt off are just as high as continuing to pay the interest charges year on year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? If not, can we agree the recommendation as set out on page 11 of the agenda, please? Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the annual governance statement 24-25. And Mike, I believe you're going to take us through this again.
Thank you, Chair. The authority is required to prepare an annual statement reviewing the authority's governance and systems of internal control that were in operation during the year. And the annual governance statement attached as Appendix A to the report meets this requirement. Point 3 on pages 30 to 33 outlines the key elements of the governance and internal control systems and processes in place. Point 4 on pages 33 to 39 considers the effectiveness of these systems and the processes. The year-end review on page 39 confirms that the current governance and internal control arrangements continue to be regarded as fit for purpose and in accordance with the governance framework. The review provides an acceptable overall assurance of effectiveness and the authority's system of internal control. Members are asked to approve the 24-25 annual governance statement and that the Chair sign the statement on behalf of the authority. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on this report? No, I've just got one question. On page 31, it discusses the pupils plan for 24-27. For those that are new to the committee, it would be great if we could recirculate this. Would that be okay?
Thank you.
So, sorry, with that in mind, can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 23 of the agenda? Lovely, thank you very much. So we're moving now on to item 6, which is the, and I'm so sorry if I get this wrong, the Forvis Mazars, is that correct? Oh, first attempt, brilliant. Audit strategy for 24-25. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to present to members Forvis Mazars Audit Strategy Memorandum that outlines the auditor's approach to auditing the authority's 24-25 financial statements. The plan considers the risks, materiality and other matters Forvis Mazars have identified in their audit planning process and the value for money work to be carried out. Katie Kingston, Senior Audit Manager of Forvis Mazars, will now take members through the Audit Strategy Memorandum. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Mike. So as Mike said, today we're presenting our Audit Strategy Memorandum, which is essentially our planning report for the 24-25 audit. Please note this is in draft form at the minute, just because there's a couple of areas we need to confirm in terms of planning before we issue as a final document. But I don't expect or anticipate there to be any sort of significant or fundamental changes between the final version and this report. So the first few pages of our report sets out that this is a risk-based plan, and outlines the work we're going to do in order to issue our opinion. So page 58 of your reporting pack sets out our expected timeline. So we've commenced some of our initial planning work earlier this year, and we have resource scheduled in to start the sort of main audit field work from October, with the aim of issuing our opinion before the end of the year. Just as a reminder, the deadline for the authority to publish their audited accounts is the end of February 2026, so we should be well in advance of that. Section 4 of our report, so from page 59 of your reporting pack, sets out our basis for materiality. At this stage, we've set materiality for the authority at 2.5 million, which is 1.8% of your gross revenue expenditure based on last year's figures. This is part of the report that I expect could change. So when we get the final sort of draft accounts from Mike and his team, there might be a slight change to the numbers based on your expenditure figures for this year. Obviously, if there are any changes, we'll update to members in part of our sort of final report. Section 5 of our report, so from page 62 of your reporting pack, details our assessment of risk. So we assigned 3 levels of risk across our audit, and at this stage we've identified 3 areas which we call significant risks. These are essentially things that we believe are more susceptible to material misstatement, so it's sort of areas that we focus more of our detailed testing. I'll just briefly touch on the 3 that we've identified so far. So we've got the risk of management override of controls. This is a mandatory presumed risk on all audits, and it's really the risk of fraud by management due to the unique position that they hold. Because it's a mandatory presumed risk, it's not indicative of us having any particular concerns here. And to address this risk, we're going to focus our audit work on areas of sort of estimation and judgment. And then, as in previous years, we've identified the valuation of the defined benefit pension scheme and the valuation of property, plant and equipment as significant risk areas. You'll notice in the accounts for the authority, these are high value figures, and they're complex areas. The authority engages with external experts to produce the year-end figures. So really, we kind of assign that as a significant risk because there's so much judgment involved in those areas. And then section 6 of our report, so from page 68, sets out the work that we're required to do in respect of value for money. At this stage, I'm happy to say we've not identified any risks of significant weaknesses that we would need to bring to your attention. It's also worthwhile mentioning while we're here that there has been a change in the reporting timetable for this piece of work. So our value for money reporting is now required to be completed by the end of November. So it's likely that this will fall before we've issued your or completed your work on the financial statements audit. They're 2 separate things, so that's okay. We've already been in sort of communication with Mike and his team regarding this work and getting it started. So I don't anticipate there being any issues with us meeting the end of November deadline. Section 7, so page 70, sets out our proposed fee for the year. As you can see, there has been a slight increase in the core fee, which really builds in some of the elements of the additional fees that we saw last year. It just kind of brings these up into the core audit fee. And then section 8, so on page 72, sets out our continued independence, and the rest of the report and appendices are really standard wording that we're required to bring to you under the auditing standards. So I won't go through them in any more detail. I'll stop there, but happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you very much, and the report is really interesting reading, so thank you. It's a great report. Anybody got any questions on this? Yes, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Katie, for this. It's very interesting. You obviously on page 55, you have this diagram which shows us this risk-based approach to this, and then you obviously explain when you look at the different some of the key risk areas you're looking at. You've obviously quite rightly said that management override is a standard item you'd expect. The other items, therefore, are not standard, for want of a so we've created this idea of our key risks. Is any of that informed by anything either that you found here or perhaps with other fire and rescue authorities, or are they, if it's in many ways a generic category of items?
So every year we sit down as an audit team and have discussions with Mike and his team to identify anything new or that's happened in the year, factoring in things that have changed, throughout the course of the year. So I think these risks are the same risks as they were last year. It's, although you said it's the management override is a sort of standard presumed risk. The other two, the defined benefit pension valuation and the property, plant and equipment valuation, they're not prescribed risks, but they're very common in the sector. So that's why they're highlighted. It's not a particular concern here. It's sort of common across the sector. So it is a risk-based plan. It does change depending on new information that becomes available. I hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, Mike and the team, are you comfortable and can you give us assurance that you've mitigated for some of the risks that are identified within this document? And I'm particularly interested in things like, delays in providing information, and that particular section on page 67. Can you just kind of run us through that?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of any delays, what we sort of set out in the finance functional plan this year was to actually look at the reformatting of how we actually produce the statement of accounts. So change the look and feel a little bit, but also the actual working papers behind. So Neil, who's behind me, the chief accountant, has actually put really strong working papers together that we will share at the beginning of the audit, and that information requirements throughout the audit, very prompt responses. So what we actually use is a application where the requests come in via the application and responses go on via the application. So it's quite, you can see when the requests come in and when the responses are given and in a timely manner.
Yeah.
I can see the wording on that page. I can see what you're referring to. This is kind of saying that if we experience any particular issues, we'll report to you. It's not saying we've had issues with you in the past, because we haven't. Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. It's just seeking assurance for us, that's all. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands go up. Okay, thank you. So can we agree the recommendations as set out on page 43 of the agenda?
Agreed.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. So we'll move on to item 7, which is the 24-25 annual year-end internal audit report and opinion. That rolls off the tongue quite nicely. And can we ask Mike to come in on this again?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to present to members the year-end internal audit report and audit opinion. Members are aware the internal audit function is provided by Liverpool City Council. Internal audit have been on site over the last few months completing the planned audits, and John Brookman, interim lead audit manager, is here from internal audit to take members through the annual internal audit report and opinion. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, the annual internal audit report and opinion starts on page 85. So I'll just take you through some key points. Page 88, section 2.1 details our internal audit opinion for the year for 24-25. So you'll be pleased to know it provided substantial assurance that the systems of internal control are working effectively. Section 3.2 on page 90, that details the outcomes of the fundamental system audits we've done, things like payroll, creditors, things like that. 3.6 on page 90, that details the outcomes from the 2 strategic audits we've done in the year. Figure 4 on page 92, that just details that we've made 5 recommendations in the year. We'll follow them up as they become due. Section 4.4 on page 92 details there's currently 21 recommendations from previous year's audits outstanding. So obviously we need to start following them up, and we're going to actively do that during this next year. I just wanted to make a note of section 5.5 on page 92, the update to the audit charter, which is being substantially updated really, and basically just to take account of the new global internal audit standards which came into force from the 1st of April. That the audit charter is detailed on page 103. Any questions? I'd say.
Thank you very much. If I can just start us off with a question. So it's on internal audit opinion on page 88. And I suppose it's not really for you. I suppose it's a question back to the team here. There's some 2.3. There's some really good news there. Really good news around outstanding at reporting to major multi-AG incidents. Outstanding at making the best use of resources. It's great. This is the kind of thing that we want to hear. It states that the service should use its enforcement powers in a more proportionate way. And the service needs to do more to make sure its values and behaviours are demonstrated at all levels of organisation and diversify its future and current leaders. So I guess I'm just asking, how are you going to address that? And then how are you going to close the loop in terms of feedback?
I'll come in there if that's okay. Certainly on the second one anyway, around the culture of the organisation and how we're trying to address that. It's something that the sector, it's been highlighted within the sector over the last couple of years around the culture, and here in MFRS we've made all sorts of changes over the last 12 months, predominantly the 3 culture and inclusion plans that we have and are currently working our way through and reporting on. One of them is set by the NFCC, one of them is set by the Her Majesty's Inspectorate, and one is set by ourselves, which is our people plan, which we discussed earlier. So we are on it, we are aware of the issues that we've had. We've got the Inspectorate are due in October the 4th this year, which hopefully they will have a thorough review of exactly everything that we have done, and we'll have hopefully a fair grading of where we are as a service. It's something we take extremely seriously, and we have made numerous changes, certainly around recruitment, around training, taking a full look at discipline and grievance procedures, so a plethora of changes that we've made, but more than happy to report back to the authority in due time.
Just add on there, both culture and enforcement and prosecution are part of the new scrutiny forward work plan, so it will be scrutinised by that committee as well.
And then in terms of the other point, which is around enforcement powers in a more proportionate way, can you just expand on what that actually means for members of the public who may be watching?
In terms of our fire safety, we're an enforcing authority under the Fire Safety order. Therefore, it's a review of how we're doing enforcement of premises, which are predominantly the commercial type premises, and along with enforcement, if that hasn't been successful to achieve the safety in the building, we also have powers for prosecution. So it is a review of how we are identified in those buildings, what's our enforcement activity, and where relevant, what's our prosecution activity been. So that is what we're reviewing at the moment, bringing into order, and will be scrutinised.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yeah, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jonathan. Jonathan, I know you've just touched on 4.4 on page 92 over the 21 recommendations from previous years. Can you just tell us roughly what is the timeline on these recommendations, and is it common to carry 21 recommendations over for another year?
Sorry. Well, a couple of them are a few years old,
Right.
but I think they are assigned to individual officers over the course of the last couple of years. Things like stores, quite a few of them are related to the stores audit we completed a couple of years ago, and they've had to change in officer, so they haven't been, but we've got that in the audit plan this year, so hopefully when we do an audit of that, that'll clear some of them. Obviously, the finance team have restructured as well. We have an online sort of tool, so people can just log in and upload their evidence, and then I just check it. But obviously, there's been a switch around in finance staff, so it's just getting them to get to lead and just put that information in.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Chair.
That was exactly my question. So thanks, Councillor O'Keefe. Thank you.
So, sorry, Chair, if I can just come in. They are outstanding on previous year's audits. They're not necessarily still outstanding, and some of them processes will have changed. In terms of the actual stores audit, there was a number of recommendations from a stores audit that actually took place during COVID. We had a lot of excess stock at that time for a number of reasons, and that's why we've actually put that on this year's audit plan to actually look at. So a number of them recommendations, while a lot of the process will have been implemented as per the recommendations, we are going to audit it again this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, I just have another, which I'm sure you'll be joyously participating. Sorry. It was just at 3.8, and this is it's a section that's quite it's worded not in the easiest way to understand. So if you could kind of put that in layman's terms for us, and then if we could have a response as to how we're addressing this and some assurance on it.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of 3.8, this is referring to the expenses audit. And the findings from the audit was the service instruction for claiming expenses does not detail the consequences of non-compliance with procedure. So the risk from non-compliance was officers do not comply with the service instruction for claiming expenses. And the recommendation was the service instruction for claiming expenses should include a paragraph on the consequences of non-compliance within the service instruction, and the breach of this procedure is a disciplinary offence, and deliberate falsification of a claim or evidence needed to make a claim will constitute gross misconduct. And the management's response at the time was, we agree with the recommendation and the service instruction, and the service instruction will be updated within this financial year. There was a further one in terms of the justification. There's no justification has been provided when a scale rate allowance for subsistent claims that exceed the normal allowance, and risk of non-implementation was value for money not being obtained, and the recommendation was officers need to be reminded that when the scale rate allowance is exceeded, a justification needs to be recorded. And the management response was, we agree with the recommendation. When scale rates aren't claimed, what we ask employees to do is to back the claim up with a receipt. Thank you, Chair.
That's great. Thank you very much. My only other question's already been asked, so I'll leave that for now. Thank you for raising that. And if there's no further questions, then can we agree the recommendation as set out on page 81 of the agenda, please? Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to item 8, which is the internal audit plan. And Mike, we're going to come back to you for this.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to present to members the proposed internal audit plan for 25-26. And the report outlines in Appendix A the proposed internal audit plan for the year. In summary, the plan must include a review of fundamental financial systems in order to provide assurance to the authority, the Director of Finance and Procurement and external auditors that these systems have met the required financial administration standards, including the relevant internal control processes during the year, and 40 audit days have been allocated for this work. Internal audit and the strategic leadership team have considered what strategic review should be put forward for 25-26 and have allocated 38 audit days to cover the 5 strategic reviews outlined in the appendix. The balance of audit days is taken up by contingency for investigations, advice and assistance and follow-up of previous audit recommendations and audit management work. Members are asked to consider the proposals in the Appendix A and approve the 25-26 plan. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on this item? Would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I don't know who to address this to strictly, but on Appendix A, obviously, Mike, you set out the business continuity is clearly a massively important thing for us. Is this, show my ignorance, is this something that's only audited infrequently? It's obviously in for next year, but is there even a, and that's obviously for a deep dive, is there even a minor, a lesser review on a regular basis, if that's someone could tell me? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pick that up. With regards to business continuity, so this is internal, looking at our own business continuity. If we have an incident in headquarters, say, or loss of power, or wherever that may be, we have a business continuity team who are based upstairs, and there's business continuity champions in each department, and we exercise frequently with ourselves and the local resilience forum. It's not about our planning for operational response in that way. That's a separate entity. This is the internal. Yeah, so we are scrutinised as any department is in the organisation.
Thank you, Chair. Also on Appendix A, item 5, review of cash management processes, spending 4 days on that. I'm just wondering to what extent we actually have any cash management these days within the service. Is it necessary to continue with it?
This is quite a new item. So in terms of the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, and we lead on international search and rescue, and if you think that they could be deployed at any time abroad, it's given them a supply of cash that they can actually go with. So we've actually set up a new process, put a new safe in, and just want internal audit to come and just check over those internal controls, just to make sure that cash coming in and cash going out is checked.
Just to further emphasise that, I understand the question as well around dealing with cash, but having deployed with UK ISAR at times as the lead for that, when we are deployed, you could be deployed anywhere in the world, and a lot of people, when you arrive in countries that have been impacted by a disaster, they'll normally only deal in things like US dollar cash. So we do, it's not just English money, we have a variance of different cash forms there for us to take away. I went to Bosnia and they wanted me to pay cash immediately as soon as we arrived, to set up our own transport, etc. So it's a little bit odd, I understand, but it's the only way we can move, I'm afraid.
Any further questions? Yes, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at, it's got no number on it, but it's follow-up on implementation of previous audit recommendations. Now, we were talking about recommendations going back a fair old while on there. So why, or is this a brand new section within your audit? And if it's not, why didn't it pick up that there was a backlog on stuff.
Yeah, so those recommendations are reviewed continuously. So what will happen is the accounting team upstairs will contact the leads for each of them audits and ask them for an update. When they get them updates, they will be shared with internal audit via the internal audit application, and then it's just for the internal audit team to come back to make sure they're happy with them recommendations. So it will be previous year's recommendations and this year's recommendations.
Sorry, can I just add, some of the recommendations will have been closed during the year, so I mean, I haven't got the figures to hand how many we've actually closed, but we're constantly assessing what the managers are saying, and they're submitting information and we're reviewing that, and we're saying, well, it doesn't actually meet the recommendation, you need to go and do some more work, or we close it.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? No, can I just make one point? It's a point really rather than a question. When we come to reporting on this at the end of the year with the next statement, can we make reference to the standards set out on audit and governance by the Fire Standards Board, please? Just so that we can show we're compliant with that. Any further questions? No? Okay, so can we all agree with recommendations as set out on page 97 of the agenda? Thank you very much. And so that brings us to the end of the agenda. The next Audit Committee will take place on the 2nd of October. And can I just thank everybody for their engagement in today, for reading the papers thoroughly and asking some really good questions. Thank you.